Hello, everybody, and welcome to Reed's Spider-Man Crawl Space Edition. Please check us out at the SpiderManCrawlspace.com. Well, guys, to kick off the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021, of course, I am going to review the final parts of course, Last Rites. Here's issues 54LR and 55. Amazing Spider-Man, excuse me, by Nick Spencer, and of course, Patrick Gleason, John Resident Infinity. So let's get right into the pros. Well, first of all, guys, the story is very dark. One thing I have to say about both issues, including the flashback, which led from Spectacular Spider-Man 200, this really gets in the mind of how Harry Osborn was, what his problems were, his issues he had with his own father, the way he was growing up, feeling like he was kind of pushed to the side, how he recognized Mary Jane as really his best friend, the woman he loved, who, of course, basically gave up for him for Peter Parker, because he does believe that Peter's problem is he's always selfish, that he's willing to have people sacrifice and do things for him, but unfortunately it's just all about being Peter Parker, and he even brings up the blame pretty heavily here. And it's very brutal how he does this with the story, with Peter in the dinner area with Mary Jane with them, and of course the Order of the Web watching as all this darkness is happening. And it's really interesting, and the artwork is very, very telling. It's very dark, very pieces. I love some of the swoops here. Find out Norman Osborn was never cleansed by the Sin Eater, and the fact that he'd been setting everything up to begin with and basically resetting him up. But that kind of leads to the cons, speaking of which, with the Sin Eater. First of all, it feels like the Sin Eater, after everything he did, Moraloon, all the cleansing and sins, basically he's defeated because Madam Web, aka Julia Carpenter, the universe's worst psychic, basically says, go ahead and steal my powers. That's how I'll beat him, because then, as they say, how do you stop a believer? You show them the truth. And once they find out what they've believed in has all been lies, they will, of course, be destroyed and defeated. It's basically been going along. It's a human psychology thing, which is a very interesting pull on it. But of course, at the same time, and basically, it makes us feel like Sin Eater, for everything they did with the storyline, ends up just being done and finished by him basically taking away himself, which of course gets rid of the sins, the powers, and all the other fun stuff. And of course, we find out that Norman Osborn was never cleansed by him to begin with, that he used some kind of voodoo, whatever, to, of course, keep himself protected. So actually, he lied about everything to help the Kingpin, which is an interesting twist. But at the same time, I feel like the Order of the Web and everything with the Sin Eater just ended up being a big waste of time. So that's not really good. Another thing is, after all this up, all the things of One More Day, all the things about basically Harry putting everything together, it just turns into, what was the point? Why, it's a good story, and it's definitely dark, and as we know, Last Rites basically serves to the next storyline here, which will lead to, Peter dealing with the aftermath of it, what was Norman Osborn and the Kingpin's deal with each other, as well as leading up to the new costume, where it's going to go for the next arc that goes past all this. But it feels like we built and built with this, and then our payoff is just so much, because at the same time, Kindred, Harry Osborn, basically tells us, you don't understand. If Peter doesn't die, then something worse is going to happen. But when they tell him, like, here, tell me what it is, he won't tell him what it is. And as it's revealed too at the end, Mary Jane's aware of the One More Day deal, and Peter just doesn't. And despite all the times Peter was killed and brought back to life, he still can't understand what it is that this is all about in the long run. So it's a very dark and grimy tale for all this buildup for the last couple of years for Kindred and Spider-Man the Face Up. But then when it's all said and over, it's kind of like, oh, you thought we were getting answers? No, wait, out in 2021, you'll get some real answers. That's kind of how it feels. So it kind of pushes my grade down. So I'm actually going to give the whole story arc here with the conclusion of Last Rites a B+. I like a lot of the dark ones and a lot of the pieces coming together for the story. We're still once again left with no answers, and of course the story is now over, and now we're moving on to the next part, which deals now with what Kindred really did with the Kingpin, what Norman Osborn's really been planning, and exactly what is going to happen between Peter and Mary Jane now that this is all set out in the open. So it kind of feels like it's kind of a half-answered storyline. So like I said, a B+ is going to be my final grade. And with that, guys, I am going to call it a new year. Join me, of course, next week as I review the aftermath of Last Rites of Amazing. And of course, in 2 weeks, I was planning on doing it here before some things happen with some issues here. I will, of course, review King in Black, from both the Symbiote Spider-Man to issue 3, as well as several of the tie-in issues here to do the big halfway point for the King of Black crossover in Venom here. Join me in a couple weeks after issue 3's release, and I will, of course, show what the storyline's been as a whole, as a review in that part, as well as some of the tie-ins. So on that note, guys, please check us out at the SpidermanCrawlspace.com for more information on your favorite Spider-Man news, reviews, and podcast and more. And on that note, guys, Happy New Year, and I'll see you on the Crawl Space.